was supposed to be just another quiet morning at Arlington National Cemetery. The kind of morning where the sun rises gently over rows of white headstones, and the only sounds are the soft footsteps of visitors and the rhythmic march of the tomb guard on duty. That day, like every day, the sacred ceremony of guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier continued with precise honor and discipline. The tomb represents all the fallen soldiers whose names and identities were never recovered. And for that reason, it is treated with the highest level of respect in the entire military. No one laughs, no one speaks loudly, and no one dares to cross the line into the ceremonial area. But that morning, something different happened, something no one could have predicted. The tomb guard on post was Private First Class Jordan Rains. Young, sharp, and fully focused, Jordan had earned the honor of guarding the tomb after months of intense mental and physical training. It wasn't just about walking with precision. It was about becoming part of something bigger than yourself. Jordan had been on post for less than 20 minutes when he noticed a man lingering too close to the barrier. Dressed in a black coat, with sunglasses and a strange, stiff walk, the man didn't look like a tourist. At first, Jordan didn't flinch. Guards are trained not to react to anything unless absolutely necessary. He kept marching, 21 steps one way, 21 seconds pause, 21 steps the other. But something about the man was off. His hands were trembling slightly. His jaw was clenched. And then, before anyone could process what was happening, the man stepped over the barrier. People in the crowd gasped. A few pulled out phones. Jordan gave the firm, loud warning he had trained for, his voice cutting through the silence. Stay behind the barrier. But the man didn't stop. He took 2 more steps forward. Then, from under his coat, he pulled out a pistol and raised it, pointing it straight at Jordan's chest. Everything stopped. The wind, the footsteps, the ceremony. Silence filled the air like a thick fog. A woman screamed. Another dropped to the ground with her child. Some visitors ran. Others froze. But Jordan didn't move. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just stared at the man with the gun, standing tall, rifle still in the same position, his eyes locked forward like the entire world depended on his stillness. His heart was pounding, yes, but he didn't let fear take over. He remembered his training. He remembered why he was there. Not just to perform a duty, but to defend a sacred promise. The man with the gun, later identified as a fugitive named Daniel Marks, was wanted for multiple crimes across state lines. Armed robbery, attempted murder, and most recently, escape from federal custody. No one knew why he had come to Arlington, or why he was targeting the tomb, but the moment he pointed that gun, everything changed. The tomb guard ceremony became a battleground. For a few eternal seconds, it was just Jordan and Daniel, soldier and criminal. The gun didn't waver. Jordan's eyes didn't shift. It was a standoff more intense than anyone watching could believe. Security hadn't arrived yet. Police were being called. But in those few seconds, the only thing standing between chaos and order was one young soldier who refused to show fear. Then, out of nowhere, another guard came charging from the far side, Sergeant Lacey Morales, who had been preparing for a shift change. She didn't yell. She didn't freeze. She moved, fast and low, using the stone barrier as cover. As Daniel turned slightly to glance at the movement, Jordan saw his chance. He didn't lunge or attack. He simply stepped forward, slowly, one controlled movement. His voice, low and commanding, filled the space. Drop the weapon. This is your only warning. The gunman shouted something incoherent, furious and wild, waving the gun in every direction now. More tourists ducked. Some wept. But Jordan kept stepping forward, each move slow, steady, fearless. And just as the gunman raised the weapon again, aiming it back at Jordan's chest, Sergeant Morales leaped from the side, tackling Daniel to the ground with full force. The pistol flew from his hand and slid across the stone floor. 2 more guards joined in, securing the criminal in seconds. He screamed and kicked, but it was over. The threat was neutralized. The gun was recovered, loaded with 5 live rounds. The crowd remained silent, watching with wide eyes, some holding their breath, others wiping away tears. Jordan didn't speak. He didn't celebrate. He simply stood back at his position, turned sharply, and resumed his post. 21 steps, 21 seconds, again and again, as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. That night, Videos from tourists began circulating online. Jordan's stillness under pressure, his fearless voice, his calm steps even in the face of a loaded weapon. News anchors across the country called him a hero. Comment sections overflowed with gratitude and awe. "That's discipline," one comment read. "That's what it means to wear the uniform." Jordan refused interviews. He declined attention. When asked later why he didn't flinch, he simply said, "Because I'm a tomb guard. That's what we do." The Army issued a formal statement commending the entire guard unit for their swift and professional response. Daniel Marks was taken into custody and transferred to federal authorities. But even more than the arrest, what stayed in everyone's mind was that image. The image of a soldier standing still while a gun was pointed at his heart. Not because he wanted to be a hero, but because he refused to let fear interrupt a sacred promise. In the days that followed, visitors returned to the tomb in greater numbers. Flowers were laid, flags were planted, and many, especially veterans, came just to watch Jordan march. To see the young man who stood his ground when everything could have gone wrong. A retired Marine, tears in his eyes, said softly to his grandson, "That's what courage looks like." And though the day had returned to normal, the silence around the tomb felt heavier, more meaningful, because now, everyone who visited knew the story. They knew that under the uniform, behind the ceremonial stillness, beat the heart of a warrior. Someone who didn't move when it mattered most. Who stood not just for tradition, but for honor, for sacrifice, for every name carved into stone. Around him, and long after the news cycle faded and the crowds dispersed, Private First Class Jordan Rains kept marching. 21 steps, 21 seconds. For the unknown, for the fallen, and for the promise that not even a loaded gun could shake. But what most people didn't know, what the news never captured, was what happened in the days that followed, in the quiet hours between shifts. Jordan wasn't unaffected. He didn't sleep well that first night. The moment when the pistol was pointed at his chest replayed in his mind like a broken reel, over and over. Not because he was scared, but because he was human. No amount of training could silence the echo of that moment. He didn't tell anyone. He stayed awake staring at the ceiling, wondering what might have happened if Morales had been just 3 seconds slower. He didn't share how his hands trembled slightly when he buttoned his uniform the next morning. But still, he showed up. Still, he polished his shoes until they reflected light. Still, he stood tall at the line, rifle by his side, posture perfect, steps unshaken. And then something unexpected started happening. Visitors began leaving letters, handwritten notes folded neatly, left along the black rail behind the ceremonial line. Notes that said things like, "My son wants to be like you," and "Thank you for reminding us what courage means." One morning, he found a small American flag with a tag tied to it. It read, "For the unknown soldiers, and for the one who stood guard." It wasn't loud praise. It wasn't celebration. It was quiet honor. The kind that matches the silence of the place he protected. And though Jordan never sought attention, he found comfort in knowing his actions had meant something beyond the moment. That his calm in crisis had rippled outward into hundreds, maybe thousands, of people who needed a reason to believe that real bravery still existed. Morales, too, avoided the spotlight. She went right back to training recruits, showing them how to react under pressure. She often pointed to the incident without naming it, just saying, "You don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your training. So train like your life depends on it." Because it might. One afternoon, a group of elementary school kids came to watch the changing of the guard. They whispered questions to their teacher, eyes wide, curious. One boy, maybe 10 years old, looked up at Jordan and whispered, "Is that the soldier who didn't move?" The teacher nodded quietly. And in that small moment, Jordan understood something deeper than all the medals and recognition the Army could ever give him. Someone had seen him. Not just the uniform, not just the precision, but him. The man who didn't flinch when death stood inches away. And so the ritual continued. The steps, the seconds, the silence. But now, every movement held even more weight. Not just because of what had happened, but because of what it meant. Because when the ceremony plays out again and again, day after day, rain or shine, it's not just for tradition. It's for the memory, for the fallen, and thanks to one soldier's courage. For all of us who still need to believe in honor.